So as they said there, I started my PhD research in 2013, and at this stage there was very little known on the effects of the condition on performance. There was a lot on kind of patient reported outcomes and subjective measures of function, which is obviously really, really important. But as Sean alluded to there, a lot of the guys will try and stay playing and training through this, and it was trying to quantify how far off the mark from their healthy competitors that they were. So the aims of the study were to determine the effects of the condition on performance and then measure changes in those variables following arthroscopic surgery with Mr. Carton. So to do that, we recruited 18 to 35-year-old males from the Whitfield Clinic. Obviously, they were athletes. They had no presence of osteoarthritis or no secondary lower limb injury at the time. And we ended up with 47 in that group. We then recruited a matched control group. So these would have guys who were obviously athletes as well and were similar in every way to the patient group with regards to age, height, weight, playing or sport that they played and the playing level. So really the only differences that we tried to isolate between the group was one group had the FAI and one didn't. So then to look at the kind of on-field performance measures, we looked at sprinting. So we looked at acceleration by way of a 10-meter sprint. We looked at change of direction speed by way of a modified agility t-test. We then looked at how far that the guys could squat. Because of the limited research available at the time, it was found that guys with this condition couldn't squat as low as healthy controls. So we wanted to look at that as well. And the other thing we wanted to look at was lower limb power. So we looked at reactive strength index by way of a drop jump from a 30 centimetre box, and we obviously looked at hip range of motion with a goniometer as well. So at baseline, so prior to any surgery, the patients had significantly lower levels of the acceleration. They were 3% slower. They were significantly slower on the t-test, 8% in that case. Like Mr. Carton alluded to there, they had reduced internal rotation, and the patients obviously had anterior groin pain throughout these tests. If a control participant reported pain, we obviously took them out of the study, so no control person had pain, but the patients did report a lot of pain during these tests. So our patient group went for surgery. They were given a 12-week rehabilitation program with the physiotherapist, and they were tested again 1 year post-operatively. Our control group then went about their normal training and competition schedules, and then they were tested again at 1 year as well. So the first thing that we kind of noticed was a major reduction in the levels of patients who were reporting pain. So you can see there for like the acceleration, you're going from 50% of the patient cohort right down to under 10, above 60 for the change direction speed to under 10, and the same for the squat. If you look at the actual variables themselves, the differences that were apparent between the groups, so the 10-meter sprint time and the modified agility t-test, those differences weren't there at 1 year anymore. And we saw significant within-group improvements on the t-test, the squat depth, and the reactive strength index for the patient group. As you would expect, with very little changes to training or competition status, our control group did not change to any great extent over the 1 year. Our hip range of motion testing then, so we saw significant improvements on the adduction, internal and external rotation, as Mr. Carton indicated earlier. 91% of our athletes returned to full training and competition at 1 year at an average time of 17 weeks. So I think the most important thing to take away from here is we increased the level that the guys could squat to. So obviously squatting is a fundamental component of any strength and conditioning program. We increased their change of direction speed. So in their the typical games that they play, so we would see mostly GA players, obviously your change of direction is going to be a massive part of that. Those were improved, but the major thing is if you take away the pain, you facilitate the return to play and how well that they're able to compete at that level compared to the guys who are not injured or who are not injured, and you essentially kind of put the athlete back together and back on the field. So thank you very much.